Welcome back to Mean Streets, the podcast where we investigate the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir. I am Luke Deckard. I'm one half of the cinematic sleuths of Mean Streets. This is a very special bonus episode. We are digging a little bit deeper into the world of Dick Tracy. When we finished the episode, we really wanted to hear from fans of Dick Tracy, and a big fan of Dick Tracy just happens to be Rob from the All-Star Superfan podcast, which is a fantastic Superman podcast, but also a co-host of a Dick Tracy by the Minute podcast. And we thought it would be a lot of fun to bring in someone who is a proper fan of Dick Tracy comics and books and the film, and get their perspective on this bizarre movie that is gorgeous but also a mess. So without further ado, let's get into this chat that I was able to have with Rob about Dick Tracy. So we have a special guest joining us to talk about Dick Tracy. We have Rob from the All-Star Superfan podcast. So you're thinking, wait, what is the All-Star? Well, this is a Superman podcast. And you're thinking, wait, what is a Superman guy doing talking about Dick Tracy? Well, Rob is actually I'm going to call Rob an expert on Dick Tracy compared to me and Matt. But if in the episode Prime, we talked about how we were very interested to know what other people, other fans, genuine fans of Dick Tracy in general, thought of the film. And then it hit me that, oh yeah, Rob actually has an interest in this. So, this is all a bit out of whack for what we normally do. Normally we have our guests on for the whole episode, but it didn't work out that way. But we thought, hey, it's worth bringing Rob on to chat about this. So Rob from the All-Star Superfan podcast, welcome to Mean Streets.
Thank you very much. I was about to say I'm on my way, which was the tagline of this film, but I'm already here, so I won't be saying that.
Now, you also have a Dick Tracy podcast. So you have a pretty invested interest, a little, more than what we have.
More than the casual man of the street, yeah. So for context, I do co-host the Dick Tracy Minute podcast. So for anyone who doesn't know, there is a subgenre of movie podcast called Movies by Minute, wherein people, psychopaths mainly, will do a series of podcasts, and every single episode will cover 1 minute of screen time from the film. So our Dick Tracy Minute, every 40-minute episode covers 1 minute of the 1990 film. Now, it has been on hiatus for about 2 years, and we made it. I think we made it as far as episode 8. And my co-host Parker, who just appeared on the latest episode of All Star Superfan, he is constantly sending me texts saying, "Oh, don't worry, minute 9 is on the way. I'm busy editing it. There was a problem with the audio, and it's just taking me a long time." So he's been saying this for years, but he is adamant that the next episode will be coming out very soon.
So, have you recorded the whole film?
No, not yet. No, the hiatus has lasted so the entire time we've been doing All Star Superfan, Dick Tracy Minute has been on hiatus. But I am very confident in Parker that it will eventually resume, and we will complete the film. It will be our life's work, I think, at this stage.
One day you will get there. No, I've never done a minute by minute podcast, and I genuinely don't know how people do it. A friend of mine did a Matrix by the minute, and I don't know if they did the trilogy or just the first one, but yeah, they had a Matrix by the minute podcast, and I was like, why is this so mean? But I was like, why would anybody listen? You're gonna talk for 2 hours about 1 minute of the film? Like, what? So I find it fascinating. Like, how do you do that? Genuinely, that is a question.
No, absolutely. And I was introduced to the subgenre by the Bat Minute podcast. So they've covered so far they've done all the Burton and Schumacher Batman movies, and they did Mask of the Phantasm as well. And
Right.
like those are films where every single shot, every single minute of screen time is interesting. Whether it's the props that were used, the choice of the cinematography, you know,
Mm.
certain flourishes in the music, or like acting choices. Like we've um, and definitely Michael Keaton and Val Kilmer especially. They're quite subtle performances. They're not very
Yes.
showy, and sometimes it is worth going back and actually painstakingly taking the time to really appreciate what they're doing, I think. And I
Yeah.
definitely think the same thing is true of Dick Tracy. Like every single shot is interesting and beautiful and carefully crafted, and it's all of it is practical. And
Yes.
the few things that aren't are matte paintings and the classic Hollywood way of doing things. And you know what? In the short 8 episodes that we were doing it, we were discovering people in the background of shots who were like really, really well known from other stuff that we never realized they were in the film before. There was interesting stories about where it was filmed. It used a couple of different studios, and all of these kind of factoids that came up that we didn't know, having been watching the film our entire lives.
Mm.
When you really, really scrutinize it. And I think The Matrix is another fine example of something where you really could, like, you could go through every single scene in the film and find something interesting about it. Where I think your point is valid, though, is newer films, even films I really, really like a lot of the Marvel films. I don't know how you'd be able to do that for those, because
No.
they feel a lot more televisual. Like they're a lot more just kind of, they're not designed to be scrutinized, I don't think.
No.
So but I absolutely take your point. It feels like something a crazy person would do. um, but depending on how much you like a film, and I think it is important that you like a film in order to appreciate a movies by
Yes.
minute podcast. But I think you can get a lot out of them if and I whatever about our podcast. Definitely any Batman fans listening, check out Bat Minute. Because those things are great, and I learned so much off them in terms of those films and things I never knew about them before and stuff like that. And there's one for all that. There's the Star Wars Minute, there's Lord of the Rings, everything. All the big franchises have a movies by minute podcast, so check them out.
Yeah, yeah. When you put it that way, it actually sort of like clicks for me. It's like, yeah, of course, if you're studying the props, the background, the acting, like that, I can see how you can squeeze. I don't know if I could get an hour or 40. I could, but if you're doing it with someone, yeah,
Mm.
maybe. But that's very intensive work. But I like the idea of it. Um, so Dick Tracy, I want to know first
Mm.
off, your what was your Dick Tracy like fandom journey?
Okay, so I do I the movie came out in 1990, so I would have been one, so I wasn't kind of around when it came out, but I do vaguely remember seeing a bit of it on TV in like maybe 1994.
Mm.
That doesn't really stick with me as a memory, but my main memory is these things I'm holding up right here: the Dick Tracy audio action adventures.
Oh my
So
god.
basically, they are effectively the comic book novelization or adaptation for this movie. And now I didn't know that when I bought them. They're basically comic books, and they come with a cassette tape that like sort of has actors replaying the captions for you.
Oh, cool.
And these were so much fun when I was kind of 8 or 9, and sort of still learning how to read and stuff like that. They were great. And I must have pieced together that this was based on the movie. And then I remember the movie coming on TV that same year, and I watched it. And me and my brother watched it. We stayed up late watching it, and I remember just thinking at the time, this is great. I really, really like this. It's just really colorful. It's action packed for the time it was made in. Maybe it's like it could probably do with another one or two action beats, but I think it was pulse pounding watching it as a 9-year old. I just love the colors. I love how they tried to make it look like a comic, but also that the characters felt real, or at least the kind of hero characters, they truly did feel like real people. Um, and it kind of sits nicely alongside kind of Batman 89 and those kind of pulpy sort of 1930s throwback movies they were making in the 90s, like the Phantom and the Shadow, both of which I really, really like as well, and the Rocketeer, all of which I really, really like, but I don't think any of them is as good as Dick Tracy by a country mile. I think Dick Tracy is way better than all of those films. Even The Rocketeer, I know a lot of people love that one. I think this one's better. And yeah, so it was mainly just the movie for the longest time. we would watch it over and over and over again. That it was taped off the TV that same night. Me and my brother watched it. I still have that tape today.
Amazing.
It's like the only kind of VHS from back when you taped things that I still have.
Yeah.
And watched that over and over and over again, and got my friends obsessed with it too. I remember like drawing pictures of Dick Tracy in school, and I remember me and my friends like coming up with what would the hypothetical plot for Dick Tracy 2 be, and all this.
Do you remember any of those?
What the hypothetical plots were?
Yeah.
I remember we envisioned a Dick Tracy sequel set in the future, like Batman Beyond future, where the kid from the first film becomes the new Dick Tracy, basically, and then he adopts a new kid, and there's like a resurgence of. It was basically every awful legacy sequel they're making now, but for Dick Tracy, and it was, this was still kind of in the early sort of internet years. It was still dial up and all that stuff. So I was getting dribs and drabs of information about the comic strips online. The comic strips, as far as I know, are not a thing here. You don't get them in newspapers here. So the only Dick Tracy comic strips I read around that time would have been kind of compilations that they had for sale in the comic shop in town. So I only had like one or two of those. So it is really just this movie. But then as I got a bit older and the internet became a much bigger thing, then I started picking up a lot more stuff. I have a bunch of the kind of the digital comics they've done over the years. I have the novelization. I randomly picked up the making of the movie, which is a lovely hardback book. I got that in a used bookshop here in Ireland. And then my good friend Tom got me this thing, six decades of Dick Tracy, which covers all of the different kind of other media versions of Dick Tracy up until the movie. So I was talking to you off mic, and I was kind of like, yeah, just so you know, it is mainly just the movie that I know about. And then I was kind of describing all this other stuff I have, and I was like, well, actually, maybe I do know more about this.
Yes.
The other thing, actually, and I'll stop speaking soon. Anyone who follows Angry Video Game Nerd will know that there was a terrible NES game based on this film that wasn't very good and really frustrating to play. What a lot of people might not know is there was a really, really good Sega Genesis game, or Sega Mega Drive, as we call it over here. That is well worth checking out. It's a side-scrolling kind of shoot 'em up, and you have a Tommy gun and a pistol, and then there's cool vehicle levels in it and stuff. And it's really fun to play even now. So I played that a lot, kind of growing up on emulators and stuff like that as well. So that's kind of my Dick Tracy fandom journey. There is a new comic series on at the moment that I would recommend to you. It's very pulpy, very noiry. It's a bit darker, and I've been reading that. I've been enjoying it. They made a couple of changes to the mythology that I'm not crazy about, that we can talk about. But
what are they? Because I might forget to ask that question, and that's a good point. So what are the changes? Because that's the I am not steeped in the Dick Tracy mythology. My experience is the film. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, my very, very quick recap, because I've already told everyone in the main episode, but all I know of Dick Tracy is this film. Kind of like you. I remember the film coming out. I remember the commercials, and I remember it being on TV in the mid '90s and seeing it that way. And that was it until I never saw it in full, or at least I didn't. I saw it on TV, but I don't know if I saw the full thing. But I've not sat properly to experience Dick Tracy until we did it for this episode. So I'm curious to know what are the kind of what is the original mythology? What's changed and what's happening with the comics now?
So well, in terms of the original, the origin of Dick Tracy, it's not an amazing origin. Basically, he sees his girlfriend's father being murdered by a racketeer, and he vows to get justice and to avenge this man's death, and that's why he joins the police force as a detective. And in the new comics now, they've changed it so that instead of being a shopkeeper, Tess Trueheart's father is the alderman, so he's like a politician, and I think he's become guilty about some sort of corrupt, dodgy dealings he got involved in, and he gets murdered due to that. And at the start of the story, Dick Tracy and Tess aren't even together yet, and they kind of gradually that stuff's all fine. And also, Dick Tracy is a veteran of I want to say World War II. I might be wrong there though. It's one of the world wars, and he has post-traumatic stress disorder, which they kind of do some stuff with. The change I'm not so crazy about though is Tess Trueheart is a journalist in the new comics.
So she's Lois Lane.
She's Lois Lane, and it's kind of happened a couple of times now where they will reboot a superhero franchise and they'll just make the love interest Lois Lane.
Yeah.
And I love Lois Lane, but that it just feels a bit lazy. Like they did it in the Spider-Man games recently, where Mary Jane is a reporter now. It's just like,
What they did?
Yeah. In the PS4 games, she writes for the Daily Bugle, and it's like, yeah, I get why you're doing this. It's an easy way to have her involved in the progressing the plot, and having her actually involved in the action and stuff like that. It's just like part of what makes these stories cool is the contrast between the hero doing the hard work and trying to balance that with his personal life, and how difficult that is when you make the love interest. And fair enough, they can be problematic in a modern context, but when you make that person just a superhero as well, or someone who involved in that line of work in a different way, it just sort of cheapens the dynamic, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But no, it's a fun comic. I'd recommend people check it out.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, no, kind of on that Mary Jane note, I not recently, maybe about a year ago, I reread the Venom saga, and there's an issue in there where Mary Jane, she has made it big time, right? And she's bought this, she's renting this flashy ass apartment in New York, and Peter's living with her, and she's covering all the bills.
Yeah.
And he feels so inadequate because he's like, I can't contribute. I could never afford this place, and I can barely, like, I don't have anything to contribute, but I'm also Spider-Man. And that to me is fun. That's where the fun for Spider-Man for me comes in, when he's, that's his struggle. He is this hero, but these sorts of things, his partner is successful and big in what she's doing, but she's not necessarily part of the the superhero world per se. I love it with Lois Lane, but some of those retcons, they feel a little bit tired. Does Tess work in this capacity, or is it just a bit sort of?
I'll admit I think I'm 4 issues in, so I haven't really, but she does. She's a feisty character, and I think initially that they don't get on, they don't really like each other, and she's frustrated that at Tracy's lack of progress in the investigation, and she's investigating herself, and their paths kind of cross. So it does kind of work. It's just it never feels fresh when they do that, that kind of way, just because I'm so used to Lois Lane stories already, that when other franchises kind of borrow that trope, it just feels a bit kind of, it's like, couldn't we think of something else here, guys? Now, on the topic of Mary Jane, I absolutely get why they need to update that. I think it is kind of ridiculous that she's a supermodel, and that
I love it. I'm like, stay with it forever. I think it's great.
Yeah, I thought it was nice what they did in the Raimi movies, where she was just an actress and she's trying to progress in that world, and we see her kind of struggling initially, and then she gets a bit of success in Broadway. I like all that. I think the her being a world famous supermodel just always felt a bit sort of like wish fulfillment for the fans type stuff,
I mean 100%, yes.
Yeah.
that is absolutely true. But I kind of, I guess there's a sort of, if you think about like nerds, and then all the super nerds who are in control of so much power right now, it's sort of like, well, oh dear,
Yeah.
That's not, Jeff Bezos with his blow up doll. Like, oh god, okay, that's not what we were. That's so, oh dear. So I also get it. So with Dick Tracy, with this cast, how do you feel about the cast of this film? Does it work for you? I mean, I know there was questions about, reviewers at the time were saying that Warren, he was maybe too old for the role. A lot of people criticized Madonna's performance. A lot of people were uneven about Al Pacino. What I'm genuinely interested in to hear from you is does this film version do justice to some of these characters? Because before you dive into that,
Yeah.
I struggled with this film, particularly with I felt that the tone was so unfocused. My wife didn't watch it, but she would come into the room every once in a while. And she would ask like, "Is this meant to be serious or is this a
Mhm.
comedy?" And I don't think the film knows entirely what it's trying to be. There's that scene where Dick Tracy is staring at Madonna's breasts in his office. She's and I'm like, it feels like a clip out of like a Saturday Night Live sketch, you know.
Mhm.
And so therefore it's a bit odd. And I just for me, I felt that a lot of the characters were maybe just a bit flat. Now, caveat that with saying I did think Al Pacino's performance was insane,
Mm.
but he was giving it his all. He was trying to do the Jack Nicholson Joker thing. He was trying to be that. And he was fully committed, but I think it was commitment to a film that didn't know what it was doing. So that's basically the summary of my feelings
Yeah.
and views of this film. But I am interested to know, does this feel like a satisfying adaptation of the comics from a character's perspective?
Uh, it's interesting. Everything you've said, I have heard other people say, and I've heard fans of the comic strip say. So
Mm,
my understanding is it is a little bit divisive among the sort of fan base of the original strips. Some people think that the tone wasn't quite there. You know, tonal imbalance is thrown around a lot. Now, on the topic of tonal imbalances, every superhero film I like from the 90s, you can level that criticism at. I think it's just a hallmark of that era. All four of those Batman films are like that. Um,
yes.
I think from what I've read, I think it does do justice to the characters. Certain changes are made. I believe Breathless is quite a different character in the original comic strip. Definitely, the Blank's identity is different.
Mm,
Spoilers for the original comic strip, I guess. So that was kind of like a shock twist, I guess. Tess Trueheart, definitely, it's kind of a fun '90s spin on the character. Like she's a little bit feistier and a little bit kind of pluckier, but it's a perfectly fine adaptation. I think Dick Tracy himself, what I like that the film did was it took this character who's known for just being, this stalwart, take no prisoners, incorruptible, like absolutely level-headed lawman who always gets his man, and they gave him kind of an interesting three-dimensional chink in his armor. He has this kind of uh, inability to commit to his relationship, and
mm,
he's so focused on his career that he can't see the wood from the trees. And the film really, when you break it down, is him learning to come to terms with settling down and starting a family,
mhm.
which I think is really cool and a fun way to do that. And I think they do convince you. I think both Beatty's performance and Glenn Headley, the late great Glenn Headley, I think that they have great chemistry together, and it's a very different chemistry to the chemistry he has with Madonna, where it's kind of just sexual chemistry. With with
Yes.
with with Dick Tracy and Tess, it feels like a lived-in relationship, and you're really rooting for them, and you can see why they're having issues, but like you just really want them to stay together and make it work. And even Danny Elfman's themes in the film, and this is something that I've really only picked up on from watching it over and over and over again over the years. If you listen carefully, there's a Tess Trueheart theme and there's the Breathless theme. And the Breathless theme is this kind of really tragic, kind of sultry sort of femme
Mm,
fatale theme. But then the Tess theme just really screams just, the good old girl from back home, and
mm.
the North Star, all that sort of stuff. It's a really really romantic piece of music, and it's one of my favorite Danny Elfman scores because we don't really hear him do romantic stuff as much. I don't think I'm wrong saying that.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
in terms of all the other guys, Al Pacino is doing the Al Pacino thing. I have not read the strips that contain Big Boy Caprice in them. My understanding is they did heavily adapt that character to basically just be a pastiche of Al Pacino's roles from other movies.
Mm.
Uh, what I really like about him is he does kind of start off as a believable-ish kind of hyper real mobster, but then by the end of it, he's just this cackling madman, just like shouting out kind of Shakespearean nonsense. And what has happened here? He's just going insane. Um, but yeah, like to your point, I can see what you mean about
Mm,
certain things. And Madonna, I kind of go back and forth between thinking it's a really carefully directed, patient performance, and it's probably the best performance he could have gotten out of Madonna. And then other times I watch him like, yeah, this is a bit wooden.
yes,
But I think she is strikingly beautiful in every single scene,
she is gorgeous in this. Yes.
and even the way they light her and the way that her hair is lit, and it's just absolutely indescribably beautiful in some scenes. Um,
Yeah.
I do believe her relationship with Tracy and how it sort of uh, propels the plot and is ultimately her undoing and Big Boy's it's a really interesting pulpy plot. It's a little bit all over the place, but it's very much in keeping with those kinds of stories.
Mm,
In terms of the big thing I always take away in terms of the sort of large ensemble of characters, like every single mobster in this is a character from the comic strip.
mm.
So like Prune Face, the Brow, Shoulders, Little Face, like there's so many of them.
Little face.
88 Keys, who else is in this? Texie Garcia, Ribs Mocha, Johnny Ram, and nearly all of them are killed over the course of the film.
Yes.
And these are major characters. This would be like if the Riddler was in one scene in a Batman film and then the Joker shoots him or something. Like these are
Yeah.
huge. Flat Top is a massive character in the comic strip, and he dies at the end of this. So I often wonder, fans of the comic strip must have been watching it, going, "Wow, they're really taking a lot of pieces off the table here," without properly exploring them. And
Yeah.
I, there was obviously a lot of talk about sequels and stuff over the years. It's like, where would they have even gone? Like everybody's dead,
Yeah, well, yeah, no, that was a question that we actually had because we were like, yeah, all of these dudes are like the main your main rogues, and is it? It felt. I mean, we all remember when like things like Spider-Man 3 came out, or Batman
Yeah,
and Robin, and like, oh my God, there's too many villains, and it's like there's two.
yeah,
you know and this one had like 30, and I do sort of wonder from the fan perspective, is it, was that satisfying, or was that a bit of a disappointment to see, oh my God, all of these classic villains are now just wiped off the board? Where do you go next?
Now, the interesting thing though is a lot of villains that they may die in this, but in the comic strip, villains die and come back to life a lot, and
Right.
they in insane ways. Like Prune Face, I believe, is cryogenically frozen and is revived. Flat Top dies, and then I think his twin brother comes back, who's basically the same. Like, there's
Amazing.
loads of just crazy soap opera antics. I'd like to think that had this been a franchise, that maybe they could have done something crazy like that.
I get that. I get that. I do have to pick up on the when you're talking about the relationship between Dick Tracy and Tess. Uh,
Mm,
I I I bought it to some degree, and I agree that part of the an interesting aspect of his, what I would say, quite very limited character, was that sort of ability to is he going to commit to her, is he not? Like, I do think that scene
mm,
where he's trying to ask if they should, get married or live together. I think he's trying to ask if they're going to
yeah.
live together. That was a very fun scene, and there was some heart behind it.
Yeah.
But again, I think part of my struggle was that too much of it was being undercut by jokes.
Mm,
It's almost sort of predicting Marvel, where in the MCU, where you have these serious moments, and then someone's always cracking a joke, and so you never quite know, am I watching a sitcom or comedy?
yeah.
What should I be feeling here? But I do agree that I think in general they had a pretty good chemistry, those two, and
Mm,
I think from my perspective on this film, uh, Tess is, I think, this one of the shining stars in this film. Her performance, Glenn's performance is fantastic throughout the whole thing, and you know I mean, I love that scene, which I mentioned in the main episode. I love the scene where she is with the kid at the diner table, and
Yeah.
he's taking the money, and she's like, he's like, oh, are you guys married? And she's like, no. Do you want a broken arm?
She went a
And then
broken arm.
and then he puts the money back because
Yeah.
she I liked a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I just but on the wider you know spectrum of all of the people they had in this film, I just kind of thought it was hard to sort of sink your teeth into because there was so much going on, but then the plot was so little. So the creator of the
Yes.
comics, Gould, he didn't like the script for this. He was and also Max Allan Collins was very
Yes.
unhappy with this.
Yeah.
What's sort of the fandom's take on kind of the big names in Dick Tracy being a little bit apprehensive about this film?
I think Max Allan Collins' problem with it was there wasn't enough of a personal angle for Tracy to go after Big Boy. And when he wrote the novelization, he added that in, I believe. Now I do own the novelization. I have not read it yet. But
Shocked.
yeah, I think they added in the element that part of why Dick Tracy was so intensely motivated to go after Big Boy was that he was involved in the death of Tessa's father. So I think that was the issue there. Chester Gould died in 1984, so I know this came up when we covered it on the podcast. I'm trying to remember, was it actually this draft of the script that he read, or was it a much earlier one? Because
I think it would have been an earlier one because they started working on this in the early 80s. But I'm not for sure of is if the two writers were attached. The two key writers, Cash and Epps, were with the project for pretty much the entire run of sort of all of its inceptions across all the different kind of studios and directors. They sort of were there the whole time, but they Gould, he wanted a lot of control financially and creatively, and I think that was with Paramount, and they were like no, and the whole thing kind of fell apart there. But I do sort of wonder, there was talk of one of the directors that was in it for a hot moment, they wanted to go more Batman 89 and make it a bit more serious tonally. Because we look at Batman 89, that is very gothic pulp. It's not cheesy, it's not haha funny. It has funny moments, and it definitely pushes the boundaries, but it doesn't feel like you are necessarily looking at a comic book where to some degree, whereas Dick Tracy feels like visually you're literally watching a comic book brought to life panel by panel, moving by moving, as it moves. What do you think of if they had gone with a more Tim Burton-esque, more I don't want to say grounded, but a more sort of dark or gritty approach to Dick Tracy?
I mean, I think the thing that sets Dick Tracy apart from just the Untouchables or Sam Spade or any of these other kind of noir detectives is the color, and that is the defining element. The color and the hyper real kind of wackiness. I think you need that for it to be Dick Tracy. Otherwise, it's just any number of other kind of noir. And like the comic strip is crazy. It goes insane. Like in the 60s, Gould was writing stories where Dick Tracy was driving a space coupe to the moon, and the kid got married to someone called the Moon Maid, and there was
amazing
all kinds of crazy science fiction in it. So I think you do need. And the thing about Batman 89, which is probably my favorite film ever made, I've seen that with an audience, and you forget how much of it is supposed to be played for laughs and how much of it is funny. And like every scene of the Joker just on his own in that film, after Grissom dies, everything after that, the Joker scenes a lot of them are played for laughs. Like when he's sitting around watching the TV, Batman, can somebody please tell me why in the world man dressed up as a bat gets all of my press? this town needs an enema. Like all that stuff. When I saw that in the cinema, that was getting howls of laughter, you know?
Yes.
And then, you know, you'll have the scene where Bruce is trying to tell Vicky that he's Batman and
Yes.
he can't get the words out. Like that, similarly, that can be compared to a lot of scenes in this where Tracy say something to Tess and he can't. I think they are similar films in their tone, and like tonal imbalance is definitely a thing people have said about Batman '89 over the years as well. I think part of what really sets this apart for me is the color and the way they chose to shoot it, and the four colors in every shot and all that kind of stuff. And I saw it in the cinema last year, and even just some of the lighting choices are so interesting and so like just picturesque, and they really bring you back to kind of noir cinema. There's a great moment near the start of the film where Tracy is in the warehouse, and however the light is hitting him, the shadow he's casting makes him look exactly like a Chester Gould drawing, like even his jawline. And this is something that's happening in camera for real. Like it's not something that they did later on. Like all of that stuff to me is so fascinating. I think I think it would be tricky to go too serious with something that is this colorful as well. I think for me anyway, they strike a nice balance. But I think part of that might just be that I'm used to films from this era where they kind of zigzag between being really, really serious and gothic and gritty, and then suddenly there's a musical number, or you know, Jack Nicholson dropping his pants or something, you know, like and especially the Schumacher Batmans were a lot like that as well.
Oh god, yes.
And you even look at something like The Shadow, which is I think is probably the most egregious example. Like that is so dark in some scenes, and then you cut back to like Alec Baldwin telling John Lone that he got a suit in Brooks Brothers, and it's this weird kind of back and forth about. It's like they're doing a gag about product placement. There's loads of weird humor in this era of superhero films that you're kind of going, what exactly were they kind of going for there, you know? So I take your point. I just think, you know, Dick Tracy is a hyper real comic book fantasy spin on, you know, noir detectives in general, and if you take away that color and that silliness. Now silliness, I say, when I say silliness, I don't think I always mean it the same way other people do, but I think it is a crucial component, yeah. And it is something that comes up. Did they nail the tone? You know, for me, I haven't grown up with it. I think they did, but I will take on board it is something that a lot of fans of the comic strip feel that they didn't nail it. So, you know, it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I always sort of wonder. One of the big questions we had was, we sort of wondered if part of the tonal problems were Warren's fault, because he came in and he had so much control, and he was such a force, and we kind of thought, well, you know, is he the one of the main reasons that the ultimate result, like on a narrative, narratively speaking, is that kind of why it's such a mess. Now, one thing that we could not fault this thing on is the way it looks. And I even with that, I don't want to credit Warren Beatty for that. I feel like it's a cinematographer 100%, because no other Warren film looks like this at all. But this is for me, this is where the film shined a lot, and that is the in camera effects, the use of the matte paintings. It is a gorgeous film. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I think that's probably why I got so frustrated with the tone issues and the sort of, is this comedy, is this not comedy? You know, should this be? It feels like it should be maybe more like The Mask. And lean into that kind of comedy and balance it more like that, which I don't think it's sort of I don't know if I understood it, but if it had been more like that sort of comedy, or like even Men in Black level, like I feel like that could have maybe made
darker
it a
comedy,
bit more iconic, maybe.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and you know, one of the hallmarks of Dick Tracy is the violence. Like the comic strip was very, very violent. Like this is before the comics code, and I'm not really sure the comics code really played into comic strips as much. I think they're kind of a different thing. I could be totally wrong on that, but they were very, very violent, and it isn't really a violent movie, you know.
Yeah.
So I take your point there. There probably could have been a bit more of that sort of an edge to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it hints at violence, but it doesn't go
Mm.
it doesn't go there. And well, I mean, Disney had this problem with it. This was meant to be under the Disney proper brand.
Yes.
And then as it was being made, they were like, "Oh shit. Okay. We're going to have to market this to, there's Madonna's nipple. We can't show this
Yeah.
to kids." So they put it under Touchstone because it was straddling too many mature themes. But
Lines. Yeah.
a bit like Batman Returns, it was heavily marketed towards kids, you know?
Yeah.
And what do you do with that? So
I don't I mean I take your point about Madonna there, but I was watching this film for 20 years before I realized that those two crucial plot elements can be so seen so vividly. It wasn't until I watched the movie on Blu-ray that I was like, holy heck. I don't think there's anything in this that's like that's any worse than, let's say, Batman 89. And it's definitely not as bad as Batman Returns in that sense, but like violence and kind of spooky stuff that will scar a child forever. I'd say the most violent thing in it is probably the final shootout, where there's just Tommy guns flying this way and that.
yeah.
And you see a couple of people get machine gunned to death in that way, but now it's like bloodless 1990, machine gun to death. You're not seeing blood everywhere.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I could see how they were a little bit freaked, and they were a lot. They weren't trying to attract the teenage boy audience back then as much as they are now. So I can see that. But like, this absolutely was market. They wanted this to be Batman 89,
Yes.
and all you need to do is look at the tie-in merchandise. It's so like right across the board. It's so similar. Like there was a book released around the time of Batman 89 called Batmania, and the same author of that wrote a similar Dick Tracy book. Max Allan Collins, edited this collection of Batman short stories. And then for Dick Tracy, he did the same thing, Dick Tracy, The Secret Files. And there's a million examples. Like the poster was very similar. It was just that minimalist thing of Warren Beatty looking at his two-way wrist radio. And, all of the kind of merchandise. And I think people like to say, though, that this was heavily the making of the movie was inspired by 89. I don't really think it was, because it was already shooting by the time 89 was kind of ramping up. I think what it really took from Batman 89 was the marketing, and possibly the use of a Danny Elfman score, because I think he came in pretty late in the game as well.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I also thought the score was good. It's a very good score. I did feel that it felt like maybe Batman 89 leftovers, but I say that, but I don't mean that in a negative sense, because the Batman 89 score is fantastic. And these worlds in many ways aren't that dissimilar. They are hyper pulpy, crime noir. And so I can kind of see why there are some similarities between the two, but it is a very good score. But it does have it does feel very, very Batman like.
Absolutely. And that is a problem, though, with Danny Elfman in general, I think.
It
like
is.
Even I love his score for the Flash TV show as well. Exact same problem. it sounds, and if you hum the Dick Tracy theme and then hum the Flash theme, they both sound very similar. And sometimes one will segue into the other a little bit. But they are two excellent themes. I think they're really, really good. And even certain bits of the Spider-Man stuff seems somewhat similar to Batman as well. I think he just has a lot of he has a lot of stuff that carries over, and I think the exact same thing is true of Hans Zimmer and
oh god, yes.
Man, Elliot Goldenthal. If anyone's ever watched Interview with the Vampire and then watch Batman Forever, you're going to hear a lot of the same stuff. And Demolition Man, here's a hot bit of goss I've recently discovered. The Simon Phoenix theme in Demolition Man is the Nora Freeze theme from Batman and Robin. Go back and watch.
Oh wow,
the two films. They are the exact same.
I'll check that out. Shit.
I think it's common enough in these sort of franchise films that stuff gets borrowed and reused.
Yes. So if they were to do a Dick Tracy film now, I genuinely don't know what the if there's a market for it. I don't know. I don't know if it's really there. It would almost have to be sort of a reinvention of Dick Tracy, I suppose. if they were to do it, like I want to, because we're talking about the colors, and one of the best
Yeah.
things we liked about, well, one of the main things I liked about the film, I said, was the visual style of it. And what I keep thinking and coming back to in my mind is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem.
Yeah.
And I sort of wonder if would that be a good approach to a reviving Dick Tracy for the general population? What would you want from they're going to do a new Dick Tracy? How would you do it?
I'm so glad you asked this, because it is something I've thought about a lot. And I think, so first of all, saying that there isn't really a market for it now, I don't think there was a market for it in 1990.
No,
I
but
think that was a
it
huge problem.
made money though. It made a lot
Yeah,
of money, so it had something.
it
It
just
had
didn't make
something.
Batman 89 money, you know? And I think part of that was they were expecting people to be nostalgic for something that hadn't really been a thing since sort of the 40s or the 50s, whereas
Yeah,
Batman was this massive thing in the 60s. So
yeah.
people who were kids then, they'd grown up and they wanted this darker version. There wasn't really any kids who had grown up with Dick Tracy other than the racist cartoon from the 60s. But anyway, to answer your question, what I would have loved to have seen, um, in the height of all the CW shows, the sort of comic book superhero CW shows, you also had Riverdale, which
Mm,
was this really cool, really kooky, really melodramatic teen drama that took the kind of visual style and Americana feel of Archie comics and just made it into this bonkers soap opera.
mm.
Um, and what I loved about Riverdale as well was they didn't actually set it in the 50s or the 60s. It just had that sort of Batman the animated series type. This could be set whenever. Like, we're taking a lot of visual inspiration from that kind of all American era, but people have mobile phones, and we can show modern technology when we need to, even if we're not gonna kind of emphasize it too much. I would have loved for them to have made a Dick Tracy show in that
Mm.
era when Greg Berlanti pretty much ran the CW, and I think they could have done a really cool kind of
Yeah.
police procedural meets kind of young hot people drama, and you could have the really 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 crazy ugly villains, and you'd have detective stuff, you'd have romance, you'd have incredible colors, and lots of cool gadgets. I think they could have done a really really cool TV show of this. In
Mm.
terms of a movie, yeah, I don't think I just think it's too, in this day and age, the types of things that are getting made, this screams of streaming series rather than movie to me. And I
Sure.
think if it was live action, it would have to be streaming. Definitely, you've given me food for thought there, though. Animation wise, they could do some awesome stuff with it.
Mm.
And there's a lot of kind of key hallmarks of the comic strip and the way Gould would lay things out, and like he'd have giant arrows pointing to things, and lots of cool kind of visual little stuff like that you couldn't do in a live action film, that you could definitely do in animation the way they did in Spider-Verse.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
something like that could really be cool. But again, it's like, he's a gruff 39-year-old police detective in a yellow trench coat. Is that going to play to a kid's animation audience? I don't know. It played to me when I was 9, so maybe.
Yeah, yeah. It is really tricky, isn't it, in the current age that we're in, to
Yeah,
determine whether, and some of that I feel will probably be down to how good is your marketing.
yeah,
Because I mean, when we were kids, I mean, behind my camera here, I have a shelf of action figures. There's Batman, there's Rorschach, there's Planet of the Apes, Caesar, not Caesar, Cornelius, there's Predator,
ah,
Terminator, RoboCop, and half of these were R-rated films that a kid
yeah,
wasn't allowed to watch.
yeah,
Yet they marketed it to kids through toys and things like, and so I think there is a way. I think there still is a way to do it and make it appealing. It's just
mm,
finding the way to do that. I mean, because
yeah,
at the moment, my daughter, she's only 2, but I will put on like the Adventures of Superman, the cartoon that we used to watch in the 90s. She
yeah,
watched that and she loves it. I'll put on Batman, the cartoon. She loves that stuff too. And then when we're out and about, if she sees she loves it. I also, I don't know if did you ever watch the '80s Mario cartoon, Super Mario Brothers cartoon?
Yeah, I have very, very vague memories of watching it. Yeah.
Well, so I loved it as a kid, so I found the DVDs of it and I bought it, and I've shown her that. So she loves it. So she sees these things out in public and she'll be like, "Oh, Superman, oh Mario," she
Mm,
recognizes it. And so I do think there is a way, to through marketing to make it appeal
mm,
to the younger audience. But I also think one of the big differences between now and in the '90s is in the '90s they weren't necessarily afraid to market more
cross.
adult themed films to children.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Um, and and I think that's something we've lost, and I actually think
I
it's
agree.
a sad thing that we've lost. What's your take on that?
Oh, I completely agree. Like Batman, part of what made Batman the animated series so special was that it straddled the line between being for kids and for adults, and I think that line helped it be brilliant in a lot of ways. And
Mm,
nowadays everything is so segmented; it has to be firmly for children or for adults, and never can the two meet, except in very rare occasions. Like I think Spider Verse is probably an example of that.
yeah,
I would love to see more content that sort of tries to appeal to both demographics rather than just squarely aimed at one. Um, I think I don't know if you want to go down this road either. I think one of the other big problems with Dick Tracy is he is, uh, this rigid uh, lawman who
mm,
is so
mm,
focused on what he's doing. He always gets his man. And if you go back and read a lot of those stories, that they do lean a certain way politically, and I
yeah.
wonder would that be an issue now today, and with everything going on with cops in America and stuff like that, I wonder would it be seen as kind of a four quadrant franchise in that sense.
Yeah,
Um, but
you would
then
have
that
to
opens the door
rejig
for
some stuff.
yeah, you could rejig, and also it opens the door to cool stuff you could do with sort of social satire and all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
they could do a really, really adult version of Dick Tracy that's sort of like a Paul Verhoeven type thing. I'd watch that.
Yeah, oh shit, yeah. Give Paul Verhoeven. Yeah, that's a good. I never thought about that. That's a very good idea. Shit, yeah. So I mean, that's one of the big things I love about film noir, but also noir fiction. Philip Marlowe, Sam Spade, all that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Is it is noir is a very elastic genre.
yeah,
Whether that is it blends really well with mixing with other genres. It can be used in science fiction. It can be used in fantasy elements. It can be used in rom coms. It can be used in comedy. But also the characters across the spectrum of of this genre range from super liberal to
mm,
ultra conservative. You think of Mike Hammer, who essentially is a Dick Tracy, was
yeah,
actually meant to be a comic book character.
mm,
He's a very, he's a pretty right wing dude who gets off on choking communists to death. He is responding to that era 1950s red scare sort of stuff. Now when so not that I would say, hey, do Dick Tracy and make him a right firm right-winged individual. But because the genre has a lot of room to sort of play, he
yeah,
could be a Rorsch. You could lean into a Rorschach-esque vibe for him. He could be, so firm in his beliefs that he's a little bit dangerous, and you could
yeah,
play with that danger. Or you could have him be, you could update him a little bit and make him, on a bit more liberal to what his comic book counterpart would be,
mm,
and make that work. I think just as well. Um, so it's tricky because you want to you with adaptations and stuff, you want to maintain the convictions and the essence of the character. And
of
that's I
course.
mean, for us, when we were watching it, I wasn't sure. I couldn't really I From watching the film, I couldn't really nail who Dick Tracy is just from the film, because he's just this guy
Mm.
who is always successful, and nothing really bad is, I don't know, he just sort of is always responding to things, and he's just always getting out, and I can't really define him as a character in this, which was one of my struggles, is like I'm trying to wrap my head around Dick Tracy and who and what he is, and I felt that maybe the film itself couldn't really commit to it. So I'm saying all that to say that, if he had a fresh life in our modern era on screen, that could be a cool chance to, play with him, but also present a more fleshed out character to film going audiences. Maybe, I don't know.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or you could do a Zoom film where it's Dick Tracy talking to Leonard Maltin and that other guy from Turner Classic Movies about the character, and then Warren Beatty himself joins in and starts talking about all this. That is another way of doing a sequel to this, or a reboot, whatever. Did you talk about those last time?
You know what? We didn't. We didn't talk about that. I saw one of his like
Incredible.
30-minute interviews where he comes in and he's acting as if he is Dick Tracy still, and
It's insane.
it felt a little embarrassing.
So basically, what happened in 2009, I want to say, his right to the Dick Tracy character. Warren Beatty owns the film rights to Dick Tracy and has since this film was made.
Yeah.
And my understanding is no one would ever finance a sequel. And his rights were about to expire in 2009 if he didn't make a Dick Tracy sequel himself. So the way to get around this was he made a 45-minute Turner Classic Movies kind of interview special where Leonard Maltin interviews Dick Tracy, Warren Beatty playing Dick Tracy, and acts like he's a real person. And it's just 45 minutes of nonsense. And everyone thought it was really, really weird at the time. But then, to make matters just even more ludicrous, just last year he struck again. He did the exact same thing again, only this time it was over Zoom. So it was called Tracy Zooms In, and it's Leonard Maltin reflecting on their previous interview.
Oh my God.
And Dick Tracy is like saying, "Oh, I wasn't entirely happy," and it's just Warren Beatty kind of just rambling for 45 minutes. And there's a scene where Dick Tracy and Warren Beatty are seated beside each other in a diner, and they're just bickering, and it's just complete nonsense. But my attitude to this was, the first time he did it, it was sad and a bit strange. The second time, it kind of plunged the whole thing into absurdist genius. I was like, I want to see Warren Beatty, do this from his hospital bed in another 10 years time, just to hold on to the rights. Like they can tear the rights, from his grave. I'd say he wants to take this to his grave. So God bless him.
I'd say so, because I mean, there have been over the years, there have been rumblings about him wanting to do a sequel, but as you say, you're correct that no one is financing it. And you know what? Hey, is that part of the problem? Is Warren Beatty the problem of why we're not getting or haven't gotten any more Dick Tracy? Because no one wants to work with him on this franchise, given it made money, didn't make Batman 89 money, but it made its money back and made a profit. But it wasn't gangbusters, and it's not a mainstay in pop culture, 30 years, almost 40 years later.
Yeah, I think he may have been part of the problem at some point. I know I heard somewhere that Bruce Campbell was trying to make a film at one stage where he would play Dick Tracy, which would be great. But I don't think that came about because of Warren Beatty. And I feel like there might have been a TV show in consideration at one stage or another as well. And same thing. It's like, no, Warren Beatty has to make it, or it can't be made.
Yeah.
So, but also I think just because we're living in this era where everything can be sold and stuff is just being churned out now, these legacy sequels and reboots and things and franchises and all that sort of stuff, it's sort of just a breath of fresh air to have this crazy old man holding onto the rights.
Yes.
And it just reminds me how much I like the original. It's like, do we actually need something? I mean, yes, they could make something great. Would they? Who's to say? That kind of way. So
yeah. Because I also speculate that Warren, to make a sequel, would demand that he continues to play Dick Tracy. I also bet that is part of the hang up here as to why he's holding on to the rights and why he is still playing the character both, on these specials and on Zoom.
I did mean to say this to you earlier on when you remarked about his age. Now, this was never something that bothered me as a kid. I never, I just it didn't occur to me that he was 52 years old. But then, I loved A View to a Kill when I was a kid, and
Oh yeah,
Roger
yeah.
Moore is about 90 in that film. But definitely coming back to it over the years, it did hit me. It's like, wow, this guy is like a touch too old. Like there's scenes of him doing some Tom Cruise running, karate chop running, and you're like, this man is not that. This does not look right. He looks
Yeah.
a bit old. But funny enough, one of the things I have kind of come to learn about Dick Tracy as a character in the comics, um, he kind of never ages in the comics. But other characters do. Like the kid in the comics was a kid, obviously, when he was originally introduced. But he is now an adult and like has been married and has had kids of his own and stuff like that. And Dick Tracy just still looks sort of 39-ish, in that Max Allan Collins prose short story collection, Dick Tracy: The Secret Files. Each one of them is set in a different time period. So the first one is set in the 30s, and then it goes all the way up to the 90s. So he is sort of. They have a bit of fun around the fact that he's kind of this ageless man who can kind of be any age, and he's still just always the same unflappable, incorruptible character. So I wonder, was Beatty maybe playing with that a little bit, possibly? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting thing to note that like that they seem to be aware that he should be really old in the comic strip, and Beatty in one of the ridiculous Leonard Maltin things, he makes some remark about how he just eats his greens or something like that, and
yes,
that's how he stayed so young. After I can't remember what it was exactly, but they do refer to the fact that he looks great for someone who should be like 120.
yes, no, that is the line. It's something about the eating the greens, like, oh Jesus. But no, I mean, in terms of comic book stuff, I mean, all of these characters, Batman should be very
Yeah,
old. Robin, Dick Grayson is a man, or you look at X-Men books. I was just, I've been reading some catching up on kind of the last kind of 10 years of bits that I've missed out on, and like there's a character that was a child in 2011, and is now a full on adult, and you're like, how old is Cyclops?
yeah.
He still looks like a 30 35 to 45, really they all look like they're in their 30s. All of the main cast, they sort of hang eternally in that. I'm like, how old is
Yeah.
Xavier? Why does he look so, what the, why is Magneto like, what,
We're
all
like
right.
5 Robins in now, and Batman is still like 40, I guess. It's
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, okay, what is time? It's it's ambiguous, and playing on that stuff could also be fun. I mean, it was a reviewer, I think it was the Rolling Stones, who said he was too old. When I watched the film, I didn't really mind his age, but that's maybe because noir heroes, their age can range from
yeah.
30s to 40s to 50s. So I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. It didn't bother me.
Yeah.
His age.
I think they get away with it, but
Yeah.
it does it certain parts of the film it becomes a little bit more apparent that this is not a man in his 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, we with all of our films, we have a rating system, and I think
Mm,
it's good to get your rating for Dick Tracy as well. So we rate all of our films out of Falcons, 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. So 5 being like, what is your all-time favorite film? What is the kind of thing. Where would you put Dick Tracy on the Falcon scale?
I I want to just be the voice of dissent and give it a perfect score because I do absolutely love this film. I will concede to the fact that that there are some just chinks in its armor a little bit. And you are not the first person to say this to me, by the way. And you are not the first person to look at me with this, crazed stare of confusion when I mentioned that movies by minute podcast about this movie. I'm going to give it 4. I think it is very underrated, and I think it did something really interesting and beautiful and unique, and I don't think it gets enough credit for what it does right. So yeah, and I think it is mostly a solid. From what I know of the comic strip, which I admit is limited, it's not nearly as much as I know about like Batman or Superman. I think they did a solid job of bringing that world to life.
Yeah,
so it's a 4 for me.
that's good. I mean, you are in the camp of Roger Ebert. I mean, at the time, he gave this 4 out of 4. Even the New York Times praised it. There was a lot of praise for this film from from big publications. So it wasn't it's not a universally hated film, but it is. I suppose it just has complications, but it's been really great to get your perspective as a proper Dick Tracy fan, because that really was something that we were like, we want to know what Dick Tracy fans think of this film, because we were a little bit baffled, but at the same time, I totally get where you're coming from with this film. That sort of childhood nostalgia. There's many films from my from as a child that I have carried with me all these years. That's I still love, despite maybe they then maybe not be the best of the best, but they just hold something in my heart. And we see it nowadays. There's kids are watching something and they love something. We're like, but back in my day, it was better because it for all of its flaws, Dick Tracy clearly resonated with a good number of people.
Absolutely.
And is it a shame that we never got any more? Is it a shame that we've not been able to get any sequels or a proper cinematic franchise out of it? Who knows? Maybe, but at the same time, Warren Beatty is a crazy guy, and we have two very odd pieces of history of him holding on to the rights that just makes this whole franchise of one film a unique piece of cinema history and neo noir history.
Absolutely, and I should say that there is a real cult following for this film, and there's more and more kind of Facebook pages, and there's a really cool guy on Instagram, and I'll be damned if I can remember his name right now. But if you look up Dick Tracy Rogues Gallery on Instagram, there's this artist who absolutely loves this film and loves Dick Tracy in general, and he does these beautiful kind of paintings based on the film, and that kind of merged the art style of the old comics with the look of the film, and they're absolutely incredible. And now he's gone on to do other stuff. He's done paintings of Batman 89 and all these other kind of beloved sort of franchise stuff, and he's done things where like Dick Tracy and the Rocketeer and the Phantom and the Shadow all in one thing, and incredible stuff. There's also just pages devoted to the movie itself and a lot of the kind of behind the scenes stuff. That there's this really rare photo of Warren Beatty with Sean Young when she was due to play Tess Trueheart.
She was.
Loads of really cool stuff out there, and there are a lot of people that absolutely love this film. Just one thing I will mention that I have only come to learn in recent years. Technically, there was no sequels. However, Max Allan Collins, who was the official Dick Tracy comic writer around the time of the film, I mentioned the short story compendium he did. He also did the novelization for the film, and then he followed the novelization up with 2 further prose novels, seemingly set in the world of the film or thereabouts. So one of them is called Dick Tracy Goes to War, where we see Dick Tracy go to like the front lines of World War II and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And then the other one was Dick Tracy Meets His Match. And they are both incredibly hard to find. And I own Dick Tracy Goes to War as of very recently. I spent way too much money on it. I do not own Dick Tracy Meets His Match yet. And frustratingly, neither of them are available on any of those like archive scan sites where you can just read a PDF of them.
Yeah.
But I am really excited to dive into Dick Tracy Goes to War and see how closely it kind of follows the events of the first film, because as far as I know, it is considered to be like set in that world.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Well, if anyone listening knows where to get that third book or has a copy of it, contact Rob, because it sounds like he would be all over that. Well, Rob, this has been a lot of fun to chat Dick Tracy and bring you on for this. So thanks for coming on. This is all very last minute, so I'm glad we could get you in for this bonkers episode. But I've had a heck of a lot of fun with Dick Tracy and chatting about this with you and the episode Prime as well. Like it's been fun diving into the world of Dick Tracy. But tell people where can they find you?
Yeah, so Dick Tracy Minute is available. It's on all good podcatchers. You can check that out. I think there's 8 full episodes up, and the 9th is coming, man. I promise you, it's
2028.
on its way. It's on its way, as Dick Tracy would say. My main podcast is All Star Superfan. We cover the full 85-year multimedia legacy of the Man of Steel, and sometimes the girl, and very much the boy of Steel. And so we a lot of fun stuff there. We do interviews with great comic book writers and artists, actors from Superman films and TV shows, and then we just do deep dives on the various kind of Superman stories from over the years in the comics, TV shows, movies, everything else. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, the artist formerly known as Twitter, and we're very active on all of those socials. And we've got a lot of fun episodes coming out soon, and we're all looking forward to the new Superman movie. So there'll be a lot of fun stuff coming up. I also appear quite regularly on Countdown to Superman, which is specifically about the new movie, and that's Stuart Mulrane's show. I do that with Michael Bailey, who is a legendary Superman podcaster.
Yes,
and people pop up on that. Zach Moore was on an episode recently as well, so check that one out too.
Cool. Lots of places to find you. All places that I also highly recommend for Superman, DC fans, superhero fans. They're all good. My Superman fandom is growing over the last sort of couple of years. I've just been really getting deeper into Superman more than ever. Even though I do jokingly mention Smallville. Jokingly but seriously mention Smallville in just about every episode. I find some way to connect whatever we're talking about to Smallville, or I just find a reason to mention it, like I just did right then. Cool. Well, check out Rob at all these places. Thanks for coming on, man, and hopefully we can get you back on for The Shadow or something.
Oh, I would love to talk. And I will be a lot more critical of The Shadow, believe me. But it is a film I love, but that is loaded with flaws.
Yes.
So I would love that. Absolutely.
We will keep you posted when that falls into the line of fire. But yeah,
the line of fire. Yeah.
Cool, man. Thanks for joining us on this.
Thank you.
Who doesn't love a good boxing movie? Well, Steve Hunt presents the Boxing Movie Podcast. On each episode, Steve and his guests discuss a movie that has boxing as a theme. Do not be put off if you're not a fan of boxing, though. Of course, he covers the likes of Rocky and the sequels, but the depth of boxing-themed movies across cinema history is much greater than you might imagine. Boxing Movie Podcast has covered the early works of Hitchcock, explored the world of blaxploitation cinema and the golden age of film noir, with episodes covering The Setup, Champion, and Stanley Kubrick's Killer's Kiss. You might not have previously considered yourself a boxing movie fan, but after listening to a few episodes of the Boxing Movie Podcast, you may have to reconsider that view. Find the Boxing Movie Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. If you love Mean Streets, join us on Patreon and get exclusive perks, insider access, and a chance to shape the show.
Depending on the tier of your choice, get early episode access, your name in the credits, and have your questions read on air.
You can help us choose films for us to review, unlock exclusive commentaries and reviews, and join our members-only YouTube Live Q&As.
So slip on your trench coats, pull your fedoras down, and join us on Patreon today.
just want to give a quick shout out to our paying patrons. We have Steve from the Boxing Movie Podcast.
We have Garm1981.
And we have Gregory Sandoval. They are our initial ground floor patrons. So if you want to join Mean Streets and become a patron and get access to cool perks, make sure you head over to our Patreon page and subscribe today for as low as $1 a month.